What's up, guys? Max here, and I'm with Brendan from Double Fine, who is the project lead on Hack and Slash. Is this the genre of the game, or is this a description of what the game is about?
It's a complicated play on words. It's a top-down action-adventure game, like a good old classic hack and slash. But the hack and slash actually has to do with hacking and reverse engineering.
Mm-hmm. I love it. This was a game that I heard about at GDC, and it was immediately just like the best elevator pitch. Just I think from the whole show. It's just like it's a hack and slash, but you're hacking, and there's presumably some slashes in there, because it's the code and everything. Where are we right now?
So we're actually right at the beginning of the game. So we've fallen in this this trap inside of this cave. But fortunately we have this trusty sword. But if we come up here and jiggle this door, we can't really get through it. If we try to break it with our sword, we actually break our sword.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it reveals that we got a little USB tip. Right?
Oh.
And that USB tip allows us to plug into these things that have ports on them. So like this door has a port on it. So when I hit it with my sword, this menu comes up that is allowing us to hack this door. And so right now we're seeing, you're just going to see all of the variables on the object. And so like this door has an open value, this Boolean set to false. And so if we set that to true, then the door is.
Oh.
And so, you break your sword right at the beginning of the game, so all of your opportunities to just smash things go away, and so you have to be more clever and come up with ways to hack them.
You have to hack the newfangled way.
And so we'll come down here, and there's this block, and there's something mumbling underneath of it. But we've got all these different variables that we can modify here, and like being a push block, remaining pushes is really useful, so we can push it again. But we're not faking anything. Like these are all just the actual variables on the object, and so like you are going to see a bunch of like variables that we just have in there for tuning, right? So like if we set the seconds per push to some large value, when we push it, this thing is going to slide very slowly.
Oh my god.
And we really try and take a tack of being very authentic with this stuff and not hiding anything. So like when we implement a creature or a thing that you interact with in the environment, like the variables that you see are just the ones that we needed to make that creature function correctly, and then we extract puzzles out of that allow us.
Okay. And for people who maybe, like me, are kind of stupid and sort of scared off by the concept of actual computer science math, obviously you're playing this with a controller, so it's a little bit streamlined. It's not going into lines of code exactly, but...
Yeah, you'll never actually have to type in a line of code or anything like that. By the time that you get late into the game, like instead of just modifying variables, you are actually going to be like modifying the game's code. But the way that works is that rooms are actually procedurally generated from the code. So we're going to go ahead and name our guy here real quick. Just kind of cruise through some of this dialogue. But when you see a function, when you can actually teleport into a procedurally generated dungeon that has all of these pieces of machinery that are hooked up together in the same flow of the execution of the code. And it's actually really interesting because it's not how it's proven to be a lot more accessible to non-programmers and less technical people because they're seeing visually kind of the shape of the way that these algorithms.
Yeah, I mean you're packaging it like a puzzle game,
exactly.
Like an adventure game. It's. Yeah. How did this come about? I mean, obviously you are a programmer and you've played games where you're doing hack and slash stuff, but I mean, what was the kind of catalyst or this inspiration?
Well, so this game is really inspired by childhood experiences I had learning to program and reverse engineer stuff by playing classic console games in emulators.
Okay.
And so, like, I would spend a lot of time when I got my first NES emulator, I'd go back and play all of the NES games I wasn't skilled enough to beat, and then get to the point where I was stuck, and then go mess around in the hex editor so I could, lock my health to a certain value or that. And so, like, and that stuff was really rewarding because you can also use it to, like, in those old games, there would be tons of secrets that you can only get by, like, massaging your way through, like, a very, like, careful collision thing on the wall somewhere. And that stuff was totally, like, you had to go look up it in a strategy guide or a friend had to tell you about it. Or if you really knew how to use the reverse engineering tools, you could just go look at the code and see where the gaps were and then find that stuff. And so it was this really rewarding experience of, like, beating the game by looking at it from a totally different perspective and also, like, finding secrets that weren't meant to be seen, right? Like, they were supposed to be hard to find. But.
Huh. So how long ago was this a thing that kind of popped in your head? I mean, that sounds like playing SNES emulators. That's quite some time ago, yeah?
Well, it's a more recent idea than that.
Okay.
I was a programmer on Broken Age, the adventure game.
Okay.
And when we were developing Broken Age, we were in a new engine, and we knew we needed good debugging tools in order to make that game properly. And kind of fell in love with the scripting language Lua that we use. And because I was writing all of this code that like just looked at the raw underlying virtual machine that is Lua, I'm gonna set this guy's. We'll have a bird friend hop around for a little bit. We'll set his damage to 0 here so he doesn't hurt us. We'll tell him to keep attacking and just follow us around.
Ah, neat.
I don't know if you saw this earlier, but we can actually like come in here and set the, sometimes the bushes have hearts on them, but we can just set it to a very large value and set the fire and hurt the frame rate a little bit and collect a bunch of hearts. But yeah, so I was developing those tools, and I was just having so much fun, like working with the raw machine, and like playing the game, and then like looking at it at this deeper level, and then backing up, and so that was kind of where those ideas kind of married. Is I knew I could take that stuff that we had built to really deeply analyze our Lua engine, and then combine it with this particular aesthetic of hacking these classic games.
Would you say that? I mean, this is kind of a weird question. Would you say this is a good introduction to the basics of coding to people? I mean, it's given the concept of values in a fantastical setting.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Like, it's really not about coding. It's really actually about hacking, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about hacking is it's not really this magical thing that's only accessible to these like extremely proficient coders, right? Hacking is really a lot about puzzle solving and that kind of thing. And so I think that people actually think of games, like when you get really invested in a game, you start seeing the abstraction and not just the visuals that underlie it. So you'll have an experience with it where it's like, oh, okay, well, I see my cool dude with a sword or whatever, but I know that like the collision of the sword, like the hitbox for it is in shape. And so you start thinking of the gameplay in those terms. And so like, I think if you're playing through hack and slash, you're going to have that experience of like understanding it on both levels, right? Like both the surface level and then like the stuff that you're modifying below to change the behaviors in a fundamental way. And so let's get this guy to stop attacking so that he stops harassing this rock.
Poor rock.
This guy will move out of the way for us.
I should have asked this sooner. What's the plot here? What's the story?
So you're just a young adventurer going off into the forest. You've been told by the town elders that the forest is too dangerous for people to go on the classic ritual where they find a sprite to bond with. And so you go out into the forest and immediately get trapped and prove them right, but then use the tools that you have to. Stuff gets a little bit more serious down the road. You kind of come into conflict with the wizard, who we cut to earlier. We'll bounce back and forth, but really you're just off on an adventure, and things go sideways.
This is a very complicated turtle right here. This turtle has a lot of different traits.
Well, like I said, we're not hiding anything here, right? So these are all of his actual properties, and you can tweak this turtle to your heart's content. Like we could go set his health to 0 and he would just die, but that's kind of less interesting, right? So we could do something like we can set his damage to 0, and now he won't be able to hurt us anymore. His spikes don't do anything. We'll get him to flip over again. We can even do really advanced stuff. So it's not just like number variables, but this is actually his behavior when he's just idling around, and so we can like go insert new instructions here that control how he works.
Oh wow!
So like let's see, we can do something fun. Like let's have him turn left for.
Oh whoa! So you can make his pattern of where he's going to go.
Yeah, he's actually a turtle because there's a classic programming language that a lot of people learn with. He's following me right now, so he's not idling yet. Let's see if we can lose him so he goes back into his normal behavior. Now let's get him just bouncing into something again. All right, now I can't see us. Now he's spinning forever.
Oh, nice.
There's a classic programming language called Logo that's actually a learning programming language, and it's a visual thing where you actually have a little turtle and you program rules into them. So all of our turtles have Logo components. But again, all of that stuff is not stuff that we built for specific puzzles. So there's always like tons of different ways that you can approach a given situation, just because there are like different things that you can do when you're tweaking their variables. So we're meeting some other sprites. They're going to give us a cool amulet. Yeah, I'm going to kind of skip through this stuff fast so we can see some more mechanics, though. Actually, let's skip the whole thing. But yeah, so the game is really designed to kind of progress from these things. There's kind of this sequence if you're learning how to hack, where you start out with, and we can actually, we can set this value to a high push value, and but we don't have anywhere to push it. But if we're a little clever and we realize that we can set tiles per push to a negative value pushing.
Oh.
And we can get into this. We can get in. Oop, I'll put my amulet there. But yeah, so it starts out with these things that are more like trainers, like things that you would download that would allow you to modify the variables that somebody else figured out how to get to. But as the game progresses, you get more and more advanced debugging tools, all the way to the point where you're actually looking at the actual game's code and making changes to it. So yeah, I'm sneaking past all these guys; they're not even noticing me.
So how advanced would you say it gets in terms that I can understand?
Well, so by the end of the game, so we're in early access right now, and we're actually holding back the final dungeon of the game so that we can get the mechanics tuned up and take that feedback that we were gathering about how this stuff works to make the final puzzles really challenging and make you really use your stuff. But the final puzzles in the game are all based on actual real code security things, and so by the end of the game, you'll actually be trying to reverse the DRM of the game.
Oh wow!
So, and I think that if that stuff sounds intimidating, I think one of the points of the game is actually that stuff is totally accessible if you're willing to do some lateral thinking and think cleverly about what you're seeing, and that anybody has those skills.
So I think one concern obviously would be: is it possible to just totally paint yourself into a corner and break the game in the process, or do you kind of keep?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So the game is actually we don't try and prevent crashes. We try to be resilient against crashes, and so if you go modify something that triggers a crash in the game, hopefully I don't know of a good way to do it early in the game. We debugged most of those, but by the end of the game when you're modifying the code, because you're modifying the code, you could easily do something that's just going to cause it to crash. And so what we actually use is let's just get rid of this guy. We can open up the state amulet, and this lets us browse through the history of our save file. And so if we introduce a crash, this thing would come up. We could actually warp back to an earlier point in time, and then go fix the thing that introduced the crash, and then go back to that play experience. And it doesn't store just sort of the most recent checkpoint of where you were. It stores the entire history of every change that got made. So, for example, we have kind of two different timelines. We were back to the other point. So if we pull up this amulet now, you'll actually see that we can go browse.
Oh dear God.
So so it's we're trying to be very honest about people will crash the game. It tries to handle it gracefully, but you'll always be able to roll back to a safer point in time before you made the changes that introduced.
Okay. Now, are you going to allow for any modding, customization?
Yeah, actually, that's another thing. So, our development roadmap for early access, the first thing is getting the final dungeon implemented, and then the second thing is actually doing full Steam Workshop integration, so that people can take the modifications that they're making in game, or if they want to just go outside of the game and write their own code for the game and plug it in, that they can distribute that around to other people. I'm going to set his health or his damage to -1 and tell him to keep attacking, so he heals us up. So now we have a little.
Oh wow.
And then past that point, the focus is going to be on just adding a really dense layer of secondary puzzles that really dive deep on the mechanics. The critical path is designed to be pretty accessible by anybody who's good at puzzle solving and wants to do some. It's going to be the less technical stuff, but still introducing you to a lot of cool technical concepts. But for the really sophisticated players who want to really dive deep on the hacking mechanics and all that kind of stuff, we're going to add a second layer of additional puzzles on the side that allow you to really kind of explore the game to its fullest extent.
Have you thought about passing this on to any math teachers out there?
It's funny. I had never thought of the game in educational terms, but people get so excited about the potential of using this to get their kids excited about coding or things like that.
Yeah, I mean, even just the fact that it's kind of basic technical. I mean, it's algebra. It's geometry. It's stuff that I found completely dense and impenetrable when it was Billy and Susie are dicking around with some apples or whatever. And it's here. It's oh hey, Did you know that fairies in Zelda are actually negative enemies? Because I just learned that. I didn't know. I don't know how numbers work.
I think there are a lot of. I think that it's probably learning stuff is fun. Maybe that's a lame thing to say, but I think it's true.
No, I think this is really cool, and it's obviously you've got a ton of stuff now that's really allowing for heavy customization and people. I mean, Minecraft, for instance, you get Project Spark and just shit where people are building things, but this is kind of going a more back-end approach.
Yeah. So what's specifically going on in this situation is that our buddy Bob is singing and he's making the turtle sad, and so if, they'll all dive under the water if we come under here. And so we'll deal with that because if you notice when Bob is singing, he's got a little port on his mouth, and we'll be able to actually hack him and make changes to our buddy too. So when we Let's get him up into the stump where he's gonna.
Well, thank God your art direction is really cute, because that could be just incredibly
It's
gruesome.
kind of sad, right? Like,
This little
it's
singing
so
sprite.
I'm gonna set his singing volume to 0 here, and now he thinks he's singing, but nobody can hear him.
He has no voice.
It's a kind of melancholy.
Yeah.
You can always set it back though. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. So we can set it super. We can set it really loud too. Oh, so I hit the wrong button. Yeah, but yeah, it's really fun designing content for this game because there are a bunch of sort of like puzzles that we've designed explicitly to sort of like allow players to demonstrate their mastery of like particular concepts and that kind of thing. But it's also just really fun to just pit you against a bunch of enemies and like let you come up with your way of dealing with it. I don't know if I can actually push that block that way. Let's see. We'll push this one.
This is just incredibly satisfying on a just strictly kind of revenge basis, because I always hated those block puzzles. It's just like, oh, guess what? They're
That's actually, I actually took the shortcut there. I designed this really complicated one that you can suffer through, but like, you can also just go around the side, or set the values to things that allow you to push them in different ways.
Oh man.
Yeah, this puzzle is kind of funny. We have this gate up here, and if we plug into this port over here, we see that it's looking for a password. And video games have taught us that password is always on a note in a chest somewhere, right? So there's a chest over here, and we'll go. And there's a note inside of it, and it says password on it. But if we take a closer look at it, we'll see that that somebody's come through and scribbled out the password.
Oh, good. Someone put a stop to that.
Yeah, exactly. It was because it's not secure to just write down the password. Someone might find it. But we found a couple of letters there, right? So we can actually if we come in here and we dial in that first W, we'll actually see that. The lights on that guy will come up, and so it's kind of a brute forcing password. I happen to know what the password is.
Okay.
This password was set by the wizard, and he thinks quite highly of himself. So we're gonna come in here and type wizard rules. That'll get this gate open for us. But yeah, so there's just tons of like the more bespoke puzzles like this where we can sort of play have a good time with specific hacking tropes and things like that.
Yeah.
And then
it's just like the old game Mastermind, just kind of lining up. Do you ever play that? Little colored pegs, yeah.
That game was
or more logically, just like actually picking a lock.
Yeah, and there may be a lock picking puzzle that teaches you how to pick locks in this game too. Yeah, and so it's just really fun to have both of those things where there's a lot of specific sort of hacking culture things that we can talk about in the context of these puzzles, and then also just these very fun playful things. So we got this corrupted swamp over here. It's corrupted because somebody went and hacked this value to a large negative number. But we'll just hold down on this button. All of the numbers you can it accelerates over time exponentially to so you can take small numbers and make them huge and see what that does to the game and all that kind of stuff. So they're gonna know.
This is really impressive. And the obvious question is, how do people go and get this?
We're on we launched on early access today. You can go to Steam right now and pick it up.
Great. How much?
It's $20.
All right. And do you have a timeline on when you're gonna when it's ready, when it's good to go? You're gonna kind of patch it accordingly, or?
We're gonna be constantly patching the game over the course of early access. But I mean, it's a single player game, and so our it's gonna hit 1.0 at the point that we have the final act of the game in, and we have the Steam Workshop support integrated, and we have all of our secondary puzzles implemented. But so that's on the order of months. It's not going to be a game that stays in early access forever.
Cool. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for showing this off. I don't want to spoil any more puzzles for people, but this looks very cool. So if you have an interest in hacking and slashing, go check it out. All right, see you guys around.